I need everyone watching this video right now to understand something that's about to make half of you absolutely furious and the other half validate everything you've been thinking for the past year. Roman Reigns didn't just return to WWE last night. Roman Reigns didn't just make an appearance backstage with the Usos. Roman Reigns walked back into WWE after months away, and within 15 minutes of being in the building, he reminded everyone why he's been called the Tribal Chief, why he's been the most dominant champion in modern wrestling history, and why Paul Heyman made the biggest mistake of his entire career when he decided to align himself with Bronson Reed during Roman's absence. And if you're sitting there thinking I'm overreacting, if you believe that what happened backstage was just another beatdown angle, if you think Roman's return is being overhyped, then you fundamentally don't understand the seismic shift that just occurred in WWE's power structure. Because when Roman Reigns walked into that backstage area flanked by G and Jimmy Uso, when he locked eyes with Paul Heyman who looked like he'd just seen a ghost, when he systematically dismantled both Heyman and Bronson Reed in a display of calculated violence that left both men broken and bloodied on the concrete floor, he wasn't just settling a personal score. He was sending a message to everyone in WWE that the bloodline is back, that Roman Reigns is reclaiming his throne, and that anyone who thought they could fill the power vacuum he left behind was living in a fantasy world that just got shattered into a million pieces. Paul Heyman betrayed Roman. Let's not dance around that fact. The so-called wise man, the special counsel who built his entire modern legacy on being Roman's advocate, abandoned the tribal chief the moment things got difficult and attached himself to Bronson Reed like a parasite looking for a new host. And last night, Paul Heyman paid the price for that betrayal in the most brutal and public way possible. Let me take you back through how we got here, because the context is absolutely essential to understanding why what happened last night matters so much and why the ramifications are going to be felt across WWE for months if not years. Roman Reigns has been the centerpiece of WWE programming for over 3 years. The Tribal Chief era has been the most successful extended championship reign in modern wrestling history. Roman held the Universal Championship and later the undisputed WWE Universal Championship for over 1,200 days. He main event WrestleMania multiple times. He defeated every credible challenger put in front of him, from John Cena to Brock Lesnar to Cody Rhodes. He unified championships. He created the most dominant faction in recent memory with the Bloodline. Roman Reigns was WWE and everyone knew it. But after his monumental match at WrestleMania, after defending his titles in what many people consider one of the greatest matches of all time, Roman took time off. Not because he was injured. Not because he was fired or suspended. But because he'd earned it. He'd given WWE everything for years and he needed a break to recharge, to spend time with family, to step back from the spotlight that had consumed his entire existence. And that's when everything fell apart. The Usos, G and Jimmy, tried to hold things together, but without Roman's leadership the bloodline started showing cracks. Solo Sikoa attempted to position himself as the new tribal chief, which was laughable to anyone who understood the family hierarchy. Paul Heyman, the man who'd been Roman's most trusted advisor, the man who'd stood by the tribal chief through every challenge, started acting strange. He was evasive in interviews. He was vague about when Roman would return. He started showing up with other wrestlers, offering advice, positioning himself as a free agent rather than someone loyal to the bloodline. And then came the ultimate betrayal. Bronson Reed, the 300-pound wrecking ball who's been destroying everyone in his path, suddenly had Paul Heyman in his corner. Heyman started advocating for Reed, managing his career, using all the tactics and strategies he'd developed while working with Roman to elevate Reed into a main event position. The wrestling world was shocked. How could Heyman do this? How could he betray Roman Reigns after everything they'd built together? Some people defended Heyman, saying he was just being smart, attaching himself to rising talent while Roman was gone. Others called it what it was, which is a betrayal of the highest order, a Judas move that destroyed years of loyalty and partnership. The Usos were furious, but without Roman they didn't have the authority or the power to do anything about it. They confronted Heyman on television multiple times, and every time Heyman weaseled his way out with words, with manipulation, with bringing Bronson Reed as muscle to intimidate them into backing down. It was infuriating to watch. The man who'd helped build the bloodline was now actively working against them, and there was nothing anyone could do about it because Roman Reigns was gone, and without the tribal chief, the bloodline had no teeth. Bronson Reed thrived under Heyman's guidance. He won matches. He climbed the card. He started cutting promos about how he's the real monster of WWE, how Roman Reigns is yesterday's news, how the bloodline was only powerful because of Heyman's brilliant mind, and now that Heyman was with him, Reed was unstoppable. It was disrespectful. It was arrogant. And it was exactly the kind of thing that would bring Roman Reigns back looking for blood. The question wasn't if Roman would return, it was when and what he would do when he got there. Every week fans speculated. Every week rumors circulated. Every week Heyman and Reed looked over their shoulders wondering if this would be the night the tribal chief came back. Last night was that night. Raw opened normally, no indication that anything special was going to happen. Bronson Reed was scheduled for a match. Paul Heyman was at ringside doing his thing, talking strategy, building Reed up on commentary. The match went as expected, with Reed dominating his opponent and getting another victory to add to his impressive resume since aligning with Heyman. After the match, Heyman and Reed were celebrating in the ring, Heyman on the microphone talking about how this is the new era of dominance, how the bloodline is dead and buried, how Roman Reigns is irrelevant and everyone needs to acknowledge Bronson Reed as the real powerhouse of WWE. And that's when the arena went dark. The lights cut out completely. The crowd knew what was coming before the music even hit. That collective gasp, that building anticipation, that electricity in the air that only happens when something truly special is about to occur. And then the music hit. Roman's theme. The place absolutely erupted in the loudest pop I've heard in years. People were on their feet. People were screaming. Signs were waving. The entire building was shaking from the noise. And Roman Reigns walked out onto that stage looking like he'd never left. Uso on his right. Jimmy Uso on his left. The tribal chief was home. But Roman didn't go to the ring. He didn't walk down the ramp to confront Heyman and Reed face to face in front of the crowd. No, Roman pointed toward the backstage area and started walking back through the curtain. The Usos followed. And the camera cut to show Heyman's face, which had gone completely white. The blood drained from his face. The microphone fell from his hand. Bronson Reed looked concerned but tried to maintain his tough guy persona, talking about how Roman can come find them anytime and it won't change anything. But you could see the fear creeping into his eyes. He knew what was coming. They both knew what was coming. The show went to commercial, and when it came back we saw Heyman and Reed hurrying through the backstage area trying to get to their car, trying to leave the building before Roman could find them. They were rushing through catering, past production areas, moving as fast as they could toward the parking lot. And that's when the bloodline appeared. Roman stepped out from behind a production truck blocking their path. The Usos emerged from another direction, cutting off their escape route. Heyman and Reed were trapped and they knew it. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This wasn't going to be Roman asking for explanations or giving them a chance to apologize. This was retribution. Roman walked slowly toward Heyman and the look on his face was terrifying. Not angry exactly. Worse than angry. Disappointed. Betrayed. Cold. He got right in Heyman's face and you could see Heyman trying to talk, trying to explain, trying to use words to get out of the situation like he always does. But Roman put his hand up, stopping him mid-sentence. No words. No explanations. Nothing Heyman could say was going to change what was about to happen. Roman looked at the Usos and nodded. That was the signal. The Usos grabbed Heyman and threw him against a car. Roman followed up with a Superman punch that connected flush on Heyman's jaw. The sound echoed through the parking lot. Heyman crumpled to the ground like his strings had been cut. Bronson Reed tried to intervene, charging at Roman with all 300 pounds of force behind him. But the Usos cut him off with super kicks, one from each brother hitting simultaneously. Reed staggered but didn't go down because he's massive and it takes more than that to drop him. So they hit him again. And again. Jimmy went low, taking out Reed's legs while G hit him with a dive that finally brought the big man down to one knee. And then Roman was there. Roman grabbed Reed by the head and looked him dead in the eyes. You could hear Roman even though he didn't have a microphone. You thought you could replace me? You thought you could take my place? And then Roman hit him with the spear. The impact sounded like a car crash. Reed went down hard on the concrete and Roman wasn't done. He picked Reed up and hit him with another spear, this time driving him into the side of a car with such force that it set off the alarm. The carnage continued for what felt like forever but was probably only a few minutes. Roman, G, and Jimmy systematically destroyed both Heyman and Reed in that parking lot. They used the environment as weapons. They slammed them into cars, into concrete pillars, into anything that could inflict maximum damage. This wasn't a wrestling match. This was a beating. This was a message. This was the tribal chief reclaiming his throne and making it crystal clear what happens to people who betray the bloodline. Security eventually showed up, but even they were hesitant to get involved because this was Roman Reigns and the Usos, and you don't just tell them to stop when they're handling family business. When Roman was finally satisfied, when both Heyman and Reed were barely conscious on the ground, Roman stood over them and grabbed a camera. He looked directly into it and said 6 words that are going to define WWE programming for the foreseeable future. I'm back. Acknowledge me. Respect me. Then he dropped the camera and walked away with the Usos following behind him, leaving Heyman and Reed in a broken heap for medical personnel to deal with. The implications of this return and this beatdown are massive on multiple levels. First, Roman Reigns is clearly back in a full-time or at least semi-regular capacity. This wasn't a one-night appearance. This is the beginning of Roman's next chapter in WWE, and if last night is any indication, it's going to be just as dominant and compelling as his previous run. Second, the bloodline is reunited and stronger than ever. The Usos have their tribal chief back. The family is whole again. Anyone who thought the bloodline was finished because Roman took time off just got proven catastrophically wrong. Third, Paul Heyman's status is now in serious question. He got absolutely destroyed last night. He betrayed Roman and paid the price. Is he done with WWE? Will he disappear for a while? Will he eventually try to grovel his way back into Roman's good graces? Whatever happens, the dynamic between Heyman and Roman has fundamentally changed, and that's going to create interesting storyline possibilities. Fourth, Bronson Reed's momentum just hit a massive roadblock. He's been built up for months as this unstoppable monster, and Roman Reigns came back and dismantled him in about 10 minutes. That's not necessarily a burial, especially if WWE plays it right, but Reed is going to need to rebuild credibility after getting destroyed by the Bloodline. Maybe this leads to a rivalry where Reed gets his revenge. Maybe Reed aligns with other people who have issues with Roman to form an anti-Bloodline coalition. There are storytelling avenues here, but they need to be handled carefully to make sure Reed doesn't look weak. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, this establishes Roman Reigns as the central figure in WWE once again. During his time away, other storylines and other wrestlers have been carrying the company. But with one appearance, one segment, one parking lot beatdown, Roman reminded everyone that when he's on the show, he's the show. Everything revolves around the tribal chief. Every other storyline becomes secondary. That's the level of star power and presence Roman has cultivated over the past few years, and it was on full display last night. The online reaction has been absolutely insane in the best possible way. Twitter crashed for a few minutes because so many people were posting about Roman's return simultaneously. YouTube channels went live immediately to discuss what happened. Reddit threads got thousands of comments within an hour. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone wants to talk about what this means for WWE moving forward. The consensus seems to be that Roman's return is great for business, great for ratings, great for the overall quality of WWE programming, because Roman Reigns performs at a level very few people in wrestling history have ever reached. But there are also criticisms and concerns that need to be addressed. Some people worry that Roman's return will overshadow younger talent who've been getting opportunities during his absence. There's merit to that concern. WWE has a tendency to default to their established stars rather than building new ones, and Roman is the ultimate established star. The company needs to find a balance between utilizing Roman's star power and continuing to develop the next generation. They can't just have Roman steamroll everyone again, because eventually he's going to retire, and then what? They need stars ready to fill that void. Others are concerned about the Paul Heyman situation specifically. Heyman is 60 years old, and taking bumps, even choreographed ones, is dangerous at that age. Seeing him get hit with a Superman punch and slammed around a parking lot was difficult to watch for some viewers who worry about his health and safety. WWE needs to be careful about how physical they get with Heyman moving forward, because while he's an incredible performer and will do whatever the storyline requires, there's a responsibility to protect talent, especially older talent, from unnecessary risk. There's also the question of whether this was the right way to bring Roman back. Some people wanted a surprise return during a match or a dramatic entrance at a pay-per-view. Instead, we got Roman appearing backstage and immediately jumping into a physical angle. Personally, I think they made the right call. This wasn't about spectacle or making Roman's return feel like a celebration. This was about re-establishing Roman as a dangerous, vengeful figure who doesn't forget betrayals. The parking lot setting, the ambush nature of the attack, the brutality of the beating, all of it served the story they're telling about Roman reclaiming what's his. Looking ahead, there are so many directions this could go. Does Roman go after the championship immediately? Does he work through a gauntlet of opponents who wronged him during his absence? Does Solo Sikoa have to answer for trying to position himself as tribal chief? Does Roman have issues with other family members who didn't maintain bloodline standards while he was gone? Every one of these potential storylines is interesting and could produce great television if executed properly. The match quality we're going to get with Roman back is also exciting to think about. Roman versus Bronson Reed in a proper one-on-one match could be incredible. Roman versus whoever is holding the championship when he decides to go after it is automatic money. Roman in multi-man matches or team matches with the Usos opens up even more possibilities. And eventually, probably at WrestleMania, we might get the Roman vs. Cody Rhodes rematch that everyone has been anticipating since their last encounter. What impressed me most about last night wasn't just the physical beatdown or the star power of Roman's return. It was the storytelling. Everything about that segment told a clear story. Roman returns. Roman finds the people who betrayed him. Roman destroys them. Roman reclaims his position. Beginning, middle, end. Simple, effective, emotionally resonant storytelling that anyone can follow, whether they've been watching for 30 years or 30 minutes. That's what WWE does best when they're firing on all cylinders, and that's what we got last night. The visual of Roman standing over Heyman and Reed after demolishing them is going to be iconic. It's already being memed, gifed, and shared across every social media platform. That's the kind of moment that transcends wrestling and becomes part of pop culture. That's the level Roman Reigns operates on. He doesn't just create wrestling moments, he creates cultural moments that people who don't even watch wrestling end up seeing and talking about. Paul Heyman's facial expressions throughout that entire segment deserve special recognition. The man is a master at conveying emotion and selling storylines without saying a word. The terror on his face when he realized Roman was in the building, the desperation as he tried to escape, the resignation when he understood there was no getting out of this, the pain when Roman's fist connected, all of it was perfectly executed. Heyman's acting ability is criminally underrated, and last night was another example of why he's one of the greatest performers in wrestling history. The Usos also looked phenomenal. They've been floundering somewhat without Roman's leadership over the past few months, doing good work but missing that extra gear that the Bloodline had at their peak. Last night they looked like the killers they were during the Bloodline's most dominant period. The synchronization of their attack on Reed, the way they moved as a unit with Roman, the intensity in their eyes, all of it clicked perfectly. Having the tribal chief back clearly elevates everyone around him and makes the entire faction feel important again. Bronson Reed's selling of the attack was excellent as well. He made Roman's offense look devastating while also fighting back enough to not look completely helpless. That's a difficult balance to strike, especially when you're being positioned as a monster heel who should be difficult to take down. Reed managed it though and came out of that segment looking like someone who took a beating but could bounce back with the right booking. The key for WWE now is following up properly and giving Reed a path forward that doesn't make him look permanently damaged by this loss. The production quality of this segment was movie level. Multiple camera angles capturing different perspectives of the fight. Audio mixing that let you hear the impacts, the grunts, the intensity of what was happening. Lighting that created dramatic shadows and emphasized the violence. Editing that showed the chaos without being too frenetic or hard to follow. WWE's production team is the best in the business, and they proved it again with how they captured and presented the segment. The timing of Roman's return also feels perfect from a business perspective. WWE is heading into the road to WrestleMania, which is their most important time of year. Having Roman back to help anchor that build is crucial. He can work with multiple people across multiple storylines. He can be involved in the championship picture or pursue personal vendettas. He gives WWE flexibility in how they construct their WrestleMania card because Roman can make any match feel important just by being in it. What happens with Paul Heyman is genuinely the most intriguing question coming out of this. Does he stay with Bronson Reed out of necessity because Roman won't take him back? Does he try to earn his way back into the Bloodline's good graces by betraying Reed? Does he disappear from television for a while to sell the beating he took? Does he align with someone else entirely to continue being a factor on WWE programming? Any of these options could work depending on what story WWE wants to tell. There's also the potential for Heyman to eventually reconcile with Roman, which would be incredibly emotional and powerful if done correctly. Heyman could spend months trying to prove his loyalty, doing things to help the Bloodline even while being rejected by Roman, until finally Roman acknowledges that Heyman has earned his way back. That kind of long-term storytelling is what WWE excels at when they commit to it, and the Heyman-Roman relationship is rich enough to support that kind of arc. The crowd reaction to everything that happened last night shows that fans are still completely invested in the Bloodline storyline even after all this time. That's remarkable. Most wrestling storylines burn out after a few months. The Bloodline has been going for years and people are still passionate about it, still emotionally invested in what happens to these characters. That's a testament to the performers involved and to WWE's creative team for consistently delivering compelling content. What I'm most excited about is that this feels like the beginning of something rather than the end. Roman could have returned, beaten up Heyman and Reed, declared himself back on top, and that would have been fine. But the way this was presented suggests there are layers to unpeel, consequences to explore, stories to tell that will unfold over the coming weeks and months. That's what great wrestling does. It creates moments that satisfy in the present while also building anticipation for what comes next. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how you think WWE should book Roman moving forward. Tell me what you think happens with Paul Heyman. Tell me if you think Bronson Reed can recover from this. Tell me what matches you want to see now that Roman is back. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications because we're going to be covering every single development in Roman's return and the Bloodline's next chapter. The tribal chief is back, Paul Heyman got obliterated for his betrayal, and WWE just became must-watch television again.